In the heart of a small town, a single act of prejudice at Tom's Diner spirals into a dramatic confrontation that challenges the community's core values. When Tom Harris, the diner owner, refuses to serve a respected veteran, John Carter, the quiet injustice sets off a chain reaction that no one saw coming. Unbeknownst to Tom, John's son, Michael Carter, is a powerful U.S. senator committed to civil rights. The incident prompts Michael to take a stand that will test Tom's character and shake the town's social fabric. As tensions rise and the town watches, this story unfolds to reveal a powerful lesson about forgiveness, redemption, and the courage to change. If you are not subscribed, I recommend you subscribe and activate the bell so you don't miss any videos. As John made his way to the door, his steps were heavy with the weight of defeat. Each step seemed to sap his strength, and his shoulders drooped as if carrying a great burden. Nearby, a young woman who had been quietly observing the scene rose from her seat, her movements deliberate and resolute. "This isn't right," she said, her voice trembling with a mixture of anger and disbelief. "You can't treat him like this." Tom, who had been fuming with righteous indignation, whirled around to face her. His face, already flushed with anger, grew even more crimson. "This is my diner," he spat out, his voice booming with authority and irritation. "I run it the way I see fit. If you don't like it, you can leave too." The young woman hesitated, torn between her strong sense of justice and her apprehension about confronting the irate diner owner. Her resolve wavered as she glanced between Tom's furious expression and John's dejected form. In the end, the fear of further conflict overcame her sense of duty. She reluctantly sat back down, her gaze fixed on John as he shuffled out of the diner, his posture rigid with humiliation. As the door swung shut behind John, a wave of murmurs and whispers surged through the diner. Some patrons, visibly disturbed by the unfolding drama, hastened to pay their bills and exit the establishment, unwilling to condone such overt discrimination. Others remained seated, either tacitly endorsing Tom's actions or too stunned to react. Unbeknownst to Tom, his moment of prejudice had set into motion a series of events that would reverberate far beyond the confines of his diner. The ripple effects of this incident were about to shake the very core of their small town. If only Tom had known John Carter's true identity and the influential connections he possessed, he might have reconsidered his rash actions. As it stood, Tom Harris had just committed a monumental blunder, and the repercussions were poised to descend upon him with the force of a tidal wave. As John Carter slowly made his way back to his truck, his mind was a whirlwind of confusion and disbelief. The warm sunlight that had once felt comforting now seemed to mock him, its brightness accentuating the stark reality of the prejudice he had just endured. He climbed into his truck, his hands trembling uncontrollably as he gripped the steering wheel. For several agonizing moments, John sat there, staring blankly ahead as waves of hurt and humiliation washed over him, threatening to pull him under. Then, almost imperceptibly, a shift occurred within him. His jaw tightened with a newfound determination, and a fierce resolve ignited in his eyes. John Carter was many things: a veteran, a devoted father, and a respected member of the community. But he was not a man to accept injustice passively. As he started the engine, his mind began to churn with strategic thoughts. Though he had been expelled from Tom's diner, this was far from the end of the matter. Tom Harris had just triggered a sequence of events that would profoundly alter their sleepy little town, and John was ready to ensure that justice would prevail. Back at the diner, Tom Harris was already feeling the immediate backlash of his actions. Several of his regular customers had walked out, some casting disapproving glares as they exited. Yet Tom stood his ground, his face a mask of stubborn resolve. He believed he had upheld his principles, honoring the legacy of his father and maintaining what he saw as moral correctness. Nevertheless, an unsettling gnaw of unease settled in the pit of his stomach, leaving him feeling strangely disquieted despite his outward bravado. As the day wore on, News of the incident at Tom's Diner spread through the town like wildfire. People gathered in small clusters on street corners and in their front yards, their voices low as they discussed the shocking occurrence. John Carter, a well-known and respected figure in the community, had been subjected to an unthinkable act of discrimination. Many residents, who had always regarded Tom as a friendly and upstanding individual, were stunned to learn that he could harbor such deep-seated prejudice. The shock of the event rippled through the town, setting the stage for a dramatic upheaval that would challenge the very fabric of their caste. John made his way to the door. His steps were heavy with the weight of defeat. Each step seemed to sap his strength, and his shoulders drooped as if carrying a great burden. Nearby, a young woman who had been quietly observing the scene rose from her seat, her movements deliberate and resolute. "This isn't right," she said, her voice trembling with a mixture of anger and disbelief. "You can't treat him like this." Tom, who had been fuming with righteous indignation, whirled around to face her. His face, already flushed with anger, grew even more crimson. "This is my diner," he spat out, his voice booming with authority and irritation. "I run it the way I see fit. If you don't like it, you can leave too." The young woman hesitated, torn between her strong sense of justice and her apprehension about confronting the irate diner owner. Her resolve wavered as she glanced between Tom's furious expression and John's dejected form. In the end, the fear of further conflict overcame her sense of duty. She reluctantly sat back down, her gaze fixed on John as he shuffled out of the diner, his posture rigid with humiliation. As the door swung shut behind John, a wave of murmurs and whispers surged through the diner. Some patrons, visibly disturbed by the unfolding drama, hastened to pay their bills and exit the establishment, unwilling to condone such overt discrimination. Others remained seated, either tacitly endorsing Tom's actions or too stunned to react. Unbeknownst to Tom, his moment of prejudice had set into motion a series of events that would reverberate far beyond the confines of his diner. The ripple effects of this incident were about to shake the very core of their small town. If only Tom had known John Carter's true identity and the influential connections he possessed, he might have reconsidered his rash actions. As it stood, Tom Harris had just committed a monumental blunder, and the repercussions were poised to descend upon him with the force of a tidal wave. As John Carter slowly made his way back to his truck, his mind was a whirlwind of confusion and disbelief. The warm sunlight that had once felt comforting now seemed to mock him, its brightness accentuating the stark reality of the prejudice he had just endured. He climbed into his truck, his hands trembling uncontrollably as he gripped the steering wheel. For several agonizing moments, John sat there, staring blankly ahead as waves of hurt and humiliation washed over him, threatening to pull him under. Then, almost imperceptibly, a shift occurred within him. His jaw tightened with a newfound determination, and a fierce resolve ignited in his eyes. John Carter was many things: a veteran, a devoted father, and a respected member of the community. But he was not a man to accept injustice passively. As he started the engine, his mind began to churn with strategic thoughts. Though he had been expelled from Tom's Diner, this was far from the end of the matter. Tom Harris had just triggered a sequence of events that would profoundly alter their sleepy little town, and John was ready to ensure that justice would prevail. If you are still watching this video and find these stories useful, please comment number 1 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. Thank you for your valuable time. Back at the diner, Tom Harris was already feeling the immediate backlash of his actions. Several of his regular customers had walked out, some casting disapproving glares as they exited. Yet Tom stood his ground, his face a mask of stubborn resolve. He believed he had upheld his principles, honoring the legacy of his father and maintaining what he saw as moral correctness. Nevertheless, an unsettling gnaw of unease settled in the pit of his stomach, leaving him feeling strangely disquieted despite his outward bravado. As the day wore on, news of the incident at Tom's Diner spread through the town like wildfire. People gathered in small clusters on street corners and in their front yards, their voices low as they discussed the shocking occurrence. John Carter, a well-known and respected figure in the community, had been subjected to an unthinkable act of discrimination. Many residents, who had always regarded Tom as a friendly and upstanding individual, were stunned to learn that he could harbor such deep-seated prejudice. The shock of the event rippled through the town, setting the stage for a dramatic upheaval that would challenge the very fabric of their community. But there was one individual whose reaction to the news was more intense and searing than anyone could have anticipated. Michael Carter, the son of John Carter, was sitting in his office in Washington, D.C. when he received a call from a family friend back home. As he listened to the harrowing details of what had transpired with his father, his grip on his phone tightened so forcefully that his knuckles turned a stark, pale white. Michael Carter was not merely a worried son, he was a formidable U.S. senator renowned for his relentless advocacy on civil rights and veterans issues. His career had been defined by his dedication to building a fairer, more equitable society. And now, the very man he had devoted his life to protecting and championing was the victim of a blatant and unforgivable act of discrimination. The cruel irony of this situation was not lost on him, and it ignited a fierce resolve within him to correct this injustice. As he ended the call, Michael sank back into his chair, his mind racing with thoughts and strategies. His position of power and influence offered him the means to unleash a formidable legal campaign against Tom Harris, the perpetrator. He could use the weight of his office to make a resounding example of Harris, demonstrating unequivocally that such behavior would not be tolerated in a civilized society. However, Michael was acutely aware that such an approach might only serve to exacerbate tensions and foster deeper divides. He knew that a more nuanced strategy was required. Determined to address the situation with both effectiveness and integrity, Michael leaned forward and picked up his phone once more. He had a series of urgent calls to make and influential contacts to engage. Tom Harris was about to face consequences he could scarcely imagine, and Michael was resolute in his mission to ensure that justice was served in a manner that would be both impactful and enlightening. As the sun dipped below the horizon in the small southern town, casting elongated shadows over the streets, the scene was set for a confrontation that would reverberate through the community. The actions of one prejudiced individual were on the brink of clashing with the unyielding determination of a son fighting to restore his father's dignity. The events that would unfold were poised to leave an indelible mark on the town and deliver a powerful lesson on the repercussions of prejudice. Before we proceed with the unfolding drama, if you're finding this story compelling, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more gripping true stories of justice and redemption. The following morning dawned bright and clear, yet an undercurrent of tension hung palpably in the air, almost electric in its intensity. The news of John Carter's mistreatment at Tom's Diner had spread like wildfire, and the town was alive with speculation and anticipation about the impending developments. As Tom Harris arrived at his diner early, as was his routine, he immediately sensed that something was off. A small but resolute group had gathered outside, brandishing signs that proclaimed no to racism and equality for all. Tom's face reddened with a mixture of anger and anxiety as he maneuvered past the demonstrators, unlocking the diner's door with trembling hands. Inside, he attempted to carry on with his usual preparations, but an unsettling premonition gnawed at him. He flinched at every sound, particularly the jingle of the doorbell, bracing himself for an unwelcome confrontation. However, he was wholly unprepared for the sight of Michael Carter making a dramatic entrance, flanked by a cadre of legal experts and civil rights activists. Michael's presence was nothing short of formidable. His stature as a senator preceded him, and his reputation as a champion of civil rights was well known. He entered the diner with an air of authority and resolve, his expression set with unwavering determination. The activists and legal experts accompanying him were equally steadfast, their eyes surveying the diner with a blend of empathy and unyielding purpose. As Tom took in the sight of this unexpected assembly, his heart sank. He was aware of Michael Carter's influential role in the civil rights movement and the high regard in which he was held. The sobering realization that he had now incurred the wrath of such a prominent and powerful figure left him with a profound sense of apprehension. "Good morning," Tom Michael greeted, his voice steady and authoritative as he entered the diner. His calm demeanor carried an undercurrent of firmness that brooked no nonsense. "I understand you had a bit of an incident here yesterday." Tom managed a tight smile, one that seemed more forced than genuine. "Senator Carter, I didn't expect to see you here." Michael's gaze remained fixed, unwavering. "I can imagine, Tom. But you see, when I learned about what happened to my father, it became clear to me that this was something I needed to address personally. This issue goes beyond just my father. It touches on the core principles of justice and equality that are supposed to define our nation." Tom shifted uncomfortably, his eyes flicking nervously to the small group of activists who had now taken seats in the diner, their presence adding an air of quiet tension to the room. "I didn't realize it was such a big deal. I just—" Michael interrupted, his voice adopting a sharper edge. "Tom, it's not just about a single individual. It's about the broader message your actions convey to our community. Discrimination, in any form, is entirely unacceptable. It undermines the very foundation of our society and the values we hold dear." Tom began to open his mouth, perhaps to defend himself or offer an explanation, but Michael held up a hand to forestall him. "I'm not here to engage in a debate, Tom. What I'm offering is a clear choice. You can either face legal repercussions for your actions, or you can take the opportunity to make amends and demonstrate to this community that you are willing to embrace change." The room fell into a profound silence, each person absorbing the gravity of Michael's words. Tom felt the weight of the situation pressing down on him. The fear of potential legal trouble loomed large, but the prospect of publicly admitting fault and enduring the consequences was equally daunting. Michael's tone softened, though it retained a resolute quality. "Tom, I believe in the power of second chances. I believe that people are capable of change, but the responsibility to take that first step lies with you. I would advise you to start by issuing a public apology to my father and making a firm commitment to ensure that no one else is subjected to the same treatment he endured." Tom's gaze dropped to the floor, his internal struggle evident as he wrestled with his pride and his sense of responsibility. He realized this was a crucial moment, one that could not only shape his future but also affect the reputation of his diner and his standing in the community. When he finally looked up at Michael, he saw more than just a politician. He saw a man advocating for principles he had once valued. With a deep, steadying breath, Tom nodded with reluctant resolve. "All right, Senator Carter, I'll do it. I'll make it right." Michael's expression softened slightly, a flicker of relief and approval in his eyes. "Thank you, Tom. I appreciate your willingness to take this step. It's a move in the right direction. I hope you use this chance to genuinely reflect on the meaning of inclusivity and respect for everyone." As Michael and his team departed the diner, Tom remained, standing alone amidst the aftermath of yesterday's turmoil. The empty seats and the scattered remnants of the previous day's events seemed to symbolize both the challenge ahead and the opportunity for redemption. Tom knew that the path forward would be fraught with difficulty, but he had been given a chance to make amends. The decision now lay in his hands whether to rise to this challenge or let his pride and biases shape his future. In the days that followed, Tom was engulfed in a whirlwind of activity as he prepared to address the town. He was acutely aware that his apology needed to be more than just words. It had to be a genuine and sincere expression of regret, coupled with a clear commitment to change. The town hall meeting was packed, and the atmosphere charged with anticipation. Every seat was occupied, and people even filled the aisles, eager to hear Tom's statement. John Carter, accompanied by his family and a few close friends, took a seat in the front row, ready for whatever might come but hoping for a genuine display of remorse and a sincere effort at reconciliation. When Tom took the stage, his nervousness was palpable. The silence of the crowd was thick with expectation. Tom cleared his throat, his voice quivering slightly as he began. If you are still watching this video and find these stories useful, please comment number 2 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. Thank you for your valuable time. I want to begin by expressing my deepest apologies for my actions, Tom said, his gaze sweeping across the audience. What I did was unequivocally wrong and deeply hurtful. There is no justification for the way I treated John Carter, and I stand here today to fully acknowledge and take responsibility for my behavior. The room was silent as Tom Harris, visibly struggling to control his emotions, addressed the gathered crowd. His voice trembled slightly, and his words were marked by frequent pauses as he fought back the surge of regret and sorrow. I want to apologize to John Carter and to everyone who was affected by my actions. I now realize that my behavior was not only discriminatory but wholly unacceptable. I am fully committed to making amends and to ensuring that Tom's Diner becomes a place where everyone is welcomed and treated with the respect they deserve. Tom took a deep breath, his shoulders visibly relaxing as he continued. To demonstrate my commitment to change, I will be collaborating with local organizations to promote diversity and inclusion within our community. Additionally, I will be implementing new policies here at the diner to ensure that no one else is ever subjected to the kind of treatment John received. Despite Tom's heartfelt apology, the atmosphere in the room remained tense. Some community members nodded in approval, their expressions showing tentative hope that Tom's commitment to change was sincere. Others remained skeptical, their faces etched with doubt and mistrust. John Carter, standing at the back of the room, watched Tom intently, his face a mask of neutrality that betrayed nothing of his inner thoughts. As the meeting drew to a close, the community's reactions were mixed. While some were willing to offer Tom the benefit of the doubt and hoped for genuine reform, others remained wary, their skepticism lingering like a shadow. The true measure of Tom's commitment would be tested in the days and months to come, as his actions would determine whether his pledge to change was authentic or merely a superficial gesture. For John Carter and his family, the journey toward healing was only just beginning. They understood that the scars left by discrimination were deep and enduring, yet they hoped that this pivotal moment could ignite a broader transformation within their community, fostering a more inclusive and compassionate environment for all. The story of Tom's Diner had become more than just a local incident. It was a powerful lesson in the consequences of prejudice and the potential for redemption and change. As the town grappled with the aftermath of the events, there was a shared hope that it would emerge from this trial stronger, more united, and imbued with a renewed commitment to respect and equality. Just then, the door to the diner jingled once more. Tom's gaze shifted, and his heart skipped a beat as he saw a man standing in the doorway. The newcomer was tall, impeccably dressed, and exuded an air of authority that made Tom instantly uneasy. The man's presence commanded attention, and Tom's instinctive wariness grew. The stranger made his way to the counter with purposeful strides, his eyes surveying the diner with a piercing gaze before locking onto Tom. "Are you Tom Harris?" he asked, his voice calm but carrying an underlying steel that made Tom's unease deepen. Tom nodded, his throat dry and his voice caught in his chest. The stranger's eyes narrowed slightly as he studied Tom's face. "I'm Michael Carter," he said, and Tom felt a chill run down his spine. "John Carter's son. I believe we need to have a serious conversation about what transpired here yesterday." Tom's mind raced as he struggled to process the revelation. He had heard whispers that John had a son involved in politics, but he had dismissed them as small-town gossip. Now, confronted with the reality of Michael's presence, Tom felt a flicker of fear, quickly overshadowed by his ingrained pride and prejudices. "Look," Tom said, his voice gruff and defensive, "I don't know who you think you are, but this is my establishment. I have the right to refuse service to anyone I choose." Michael's expression remained impassive, but his eyes held a dangerous glint. "Is that so?" he responded softly. "And on what grounds did you refuse service to my father, a decorated veteran who has been a respected member of this town for far longer than you've been here?" Tom's face flushed with anger and embarrassment. "I don't have to explain myself to you," he spat. "Your father and people like him aren't welcome here." End of story. A hush fell over the diner as patrons watched the confrontation with a mixture of horror and fascination. Michael Carter stood firm, his gaze unwavering as he addressed Tom with quiet but intense fury. "Mr. Harris," Michael said, his voice low and controlled but imbued with an edge that made Tom take an involuntary step back. "I had hoped we could engage in a rational discussion, but it's clear that's not possible. So let me be very clear, what you did yesterday was not only morally reprehensible, it was illegal. I intend to use every resource at my disposal to ensure that you face the consequences of your actions." Tom's bravado faltered for a moment, his confidence wavering in the face of Michael's stern resolve. What do you mean? You can't do anything to me. This is my business." Michael's eyes narrowed further as he prepared to lay out the legal and moral implications of Tom's actions, setting the stage for a confrontation that would not only challenge Tom's sense of invincibility, but also test the town's readiness for true change. Michael's smile was a cold, hard mask, completely devoid of any warmth or compassion. "Oh, Mr. Harris," he said, his voice slicing through the tension like a razor-sharp blade, "you have no idea who you're dealing with. I'm not merely John Carter's son. I am a United States Senator, and I've dedicated my entire career to combating exactly the kind of vile bigotry you exhibited yesterday." The impact of Michael's revelation hit Tom like a physical blow. The color drained from his face, leaving him pale and trembling. He had just expelled the father of a U.S. senator, a man with the clout and resources to dismantle his life and reputation. The enormity of his mistake weighed heavily on him, pressing down with a suffocating force. "This isn't over," Michael said, his tone icy and resolute. "You'll be hearing from me again very soon." As Michael turned and walked out, the door closing behind him with a finality that seemed to echo through the diner, the atmosphere inside exploded into a chaotic whirlwind of whispers and murmurs. Tom remained frozen behind the counter, his mind reeling as the full gravity of his actions began to sink in. He had believed he was standing firm for his principles, upholding the values his father had instilled in him. Yet now, faced with the real possibility of serious repercussions, Tom began to question whether those principles were worth the price he might have to pay. The weight of his decision bore down on him like a heavy, unrelenting burden. Unbeknownst to Tom, Michael Carter's visit was just the beginning of a much larger, more complex upheaval. The wheels of justice were already in motion, and Tom's world was on the brink of a profound transformation. The seemingly peaceful veneer of their small southern town was about to be ripped away, exposing long-held prejudices and dark secrets that had been buried beneath its tranquil facade. The community's denial and silence would be shattered, revealing the harsh realities hidden beneath their serene exterior. Outside the diner, Michael Carter's polished shoes clicked methodically against the pavement as he walked away, each step resonating with a sense of grim determination. He pulled out his phone and made a terse call. "It's done," he said with a voice that was both calm and steely. "He's exactly as stubborn and prejudiced as we anticipated. It's time to move to phase 2. Inside the diner, Tom Harris was unraveling before the very eyes of his remaining patrons. His hands shook uncontrollably, as he attempted to pour coffee for a customer, the liquid spilling over the counter in a chaotic and messy spill. The weight of what had transpired pressed down on him like a physical force, almost suffocating in its intensity. Tom had always seen himself as a pillar of the community, a man guided by principles handed down by his father. But now, with the crushing realization of the potential fallout from his actions, doubt began to creep in, gnawing at him with relentless persistence. If you are still watching this video and find these stories useful, please comment number 3 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. Thank you for your valuable time. As the day wore on, Tom couldn't shake the foreboding sense that his world was on the brink of collapse. Each time the bell above the door jingled, he flinched, half expecting federal agents or lawyers to burst in and confront him. Instead of the dramatic confrontation he feared, he was met with something far more unsettling: the silent, pervasive judgment of his community. The loyal customers who had frequented his diner for years now avoided his gaze, some choosing not to come in at all. Those who did enter were subdued, their usual lively conversations replaced by awkward, strained silences. Tom felt their unspoken condemnation weighing heavily on him, an oppressive reminder of the alienation he now faced. As closing time approached, Tom sank into a booth, his head resting heavily in his hands. The diner, once filled with the vibrant chatter of patrons enjoying their evening meals, was eerily empty. The silence was deafening, a stark contrast to the usual hustle and bustle. For the first time, Tom allowed himself to confront the possibility that he had made a grave mistake, a misjudgment that could cost him dearly. Meanwhile, across town, John Carter sat in his modest living room, surrounded by old photographs and mementos from his years of service. He picked up a framed picture of himself and his late wife, taken on the day he returned from the war. Their faces, young and full of hope, looked back at him with an innocence and optimism that now seemed so distant. "Oh, Margaret," he whispered, tracing her smiling face with his finger. "What would you say if you could see what's happening now?" The sound of a car pulling into the driveway jolted John from his reverie. Moments later, the front door opened and Michael stepped in. Father and son embraced tightly, the unspoken weight of recent events hanging heavily between them. "How did it go?" John asked, his voice filled with a mixture of concern and hope as they settled into their chairs. Michael's expression was grave, his jaw clenched in determination. "About as well as we expected," he said, his voice carrying a hint of frustration. "He's not going to change his mind easily, Dad. But don't worry, we have a plan." The resolve in Michael's voice was clear, a promise that the fight was far from over and that justice would not be denied. John nodded slowly, his face etched with a mixture of disbelief and deep sorrow. "I never imagined things would come to this," he said, his voice breaking. "Tom and we weren't exactly close, but I always believed there was a mutual respect between us. To discover now that he viewed me as less than human, merely because of the color of my skin, it's a pain that cuts deeper than I can describe. It's as though the foundation of what I thought was a shared decency has crumbled, leaving nothing but a raw, aching wound. It's not just about the disrespect. It's about the betrayal of a fundamental belief in our shared humanity. It hurts, Michael. It hurts in a way that makes me question everything I thought I understood about how people can change." Michael leaned forward, his eyes full of fierce compassion as he grasped his father's weathered hand. "I understand, Dad," he said softly but with a firm resolve. "And that's precisely why we can't let this injustice go unchallenged. What happened to you isn't just a personal affront, it's a reflection of a much larger, pervasive issue of discrimination that plagues people of color everywhere. We owe it to you, and to every individual who endures such indignities every day, to stand up and fight against it. This is not just about correcting a wrong done to one person. It's about making a statement that such behavior will no longer be tolerated. We have a responsibility to shine a light on this issue and to make sure that your suffering leads to real, meaningful change. John looked at his son, seeing in his eyes the same fierce determination that had driven him in his youth, a determination now directed towards fighting for justice. There was a swell of pride within him, tempered by a deep sense of sadness. This wasn't the world he had hoped to leave for his son, a world where such hatred and bigotry still lingered. Yet, amidst his pain, he felt a profound gratitude for Michael's strength and his unyielding commitment to justice. "What's the next step?" John asked, his voice growing firmer, infused with a new sense of purpose. Michael's eyes sparkled with a mix of resolve and strategic intent, hinting at a plan that was already set in motion. "Well, Dad, that's where things take an intriguing turn," Michael began, leaning in closer. "I've uncovered something significant. It appears that Tom Harris is facing considerable financial difficulties. His diner, which he's been trying to sell for years, isn't performing as well as he's let on. The truth is, he's been holding on to it out of sheer stubbornness and a deep attachment to the legacy of his family. But now, with the recent incident, he might be more inclined to consider an offer, particularly if it's as lucrative as it appears." John's eyebrows shot up in surprise, and a glimmer of hope flickered in his eyes. "Sell the diner? But it's been in his family for generations." Michael nodded, a determined smile touching his lips. "Exactly. And that's precisely why he's been so hesitant to let it go. But given the gravity of today's events, I think he may be more open to selling, especially if the right offer comes along. This could be our chance to make a powerful statement." John leaned back, his mind swirling with the implications. "What are you planning, son?" Michael's smile was both resolute and subtly mischievous. "Let's just say that Tom Harris is about to receive an offer he won't be able to refuse. And when all is said and done, that diner will stand for something far different from what it represents now. It will symbolize the triumph of justice over prejudice." As night fell over the small town, a sense of foreboding mixed with anticipation hung in the air. The seeds of change had been sown, but Tom Harris remained blissfully unaware of the storm that was about to engulf his world. The coming days would test the very fabric of the community, forcing its members to confront their own biases and preconceptions in a way they had never before experienced. The following morning broke with a bright, clear sky, but the atmosphere was charged with a palpable tension. The story of John Carter's mistreatment had spread rapidly, and the town buzzed with speculation about what would come next. Tom Harris arrived at his diner earlier than usual, troubled by nightmares of angry crowds and legal troubles. As he unlocked the door, he noticed a thick envelope slipped under it. With hands that trembled uncontrollably, he picked it up and opened it. Inside was a formal document, and as Tom read the contents, his face turned ashen. The document contained an offer to buy his diner for nearly twice its market value. The offer was anonymous and came through a law firm he didn't recognize. At the bottom was a note: "This offer is time-sensitive and contingent upon your immediate departure from the premises and your agreement not to open another business in the area." Tom's mind spun with confusion and fear. Who could have made such an offer, and why now? The diner had been struggling for years, and though he had considered selling it before, he had always resisted, holding on to the legacy his father had left him. But now, with the fallout from his confrontation with John Carter and his son looming large, the offer seemed like a tempting escape, a way to extricate himself from the mess he had created. Yet, the offer's timing and conditions felt unsettlingly convenient. As Tom stood there, grappling with the reality of his situation, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of his problems. If you are still watching this video and find these stories useful, please comment number 4 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. Thank you for your valuable time. The bell above the door jingled, pulling him from his reverie. He looked up to see Sarah, his longtime waitress, entering the diner. Her expression was one of guarded concern as she took in his pale face. "Tom, are you okay?" "You look like you've seen a ghost." Tom quickly shoved the letter into his pocket, his face hardening. "I'm fine," he replied, his voice clipped. "Just a lot on my mind." Sarah's eyes were filled with a mix of concern and disappointment. "Tom, about what happened yesterday, what you did to Mr. Carter, it wasn't right. People are talking, and they're saying they won't come back to the diner." Tom's anger flared uncontrollably. "It's my diner," he snapped. "I can serve whoever I want. What's it to you?" Sarah's gaze was a mixture of sadness and resolve. "Tom, this isn't just about your dinner. It's about the community, about doing what's right. And right now it seems like you've forgotten that." Tom felt a surge of frustration and guilt. The walls of his diner, once a sanctuary, now seemed to close in around him, reflecting the weight of his actions and the consequences they were starting to unravel. Sarah flinched at the sharpness in Tom's tone, a reflexive reaction to the unexpected burst of frustration. Tom immediately felt a pang of regret, his heart sinking as he saw the hurt in her eyes. He ran a trembling hand through his thinning, graying hair, the simple act making him feel every one of his years. It was as though the weight of his accumulated regrets and the enormity of his current situation were physically pressing down on him. "I'm truly sorry, Sarah," he said, his voice quivering with the strain of his emotions. "I didn't mean to snap at you. It's just that everything seems to be unraveling, and I don't know how to put it back together." The words came out almost as a plea, a desperate attempt to articulate the overwhelming sense of despair and helplessness that had taken hold of him. Sarah's expression softened, her eyes reflecting a mix of empathy and concern. "Maybe you could start by apologizing to Mr. Carter," she suggested gently. "It's not too late to make things right." Her voice carried a tone of quiet encouragement, hoping to guide Tom towards a path of redemption. Her words were not just practical advice, but a beacon of hope in his murky sea of self-doubt and turmoil. Tom's jaw clenched involuntarily at the thought of facing John Carter. The idea of offering an apology felt like a betrayal of everything he had been taught growing up. His father's harsh, unyielding voice echoed in his mind, filled with bitterness and prejudice that had shaped his worldview. Yet, amid the clamor of old beliefs and ingrained prejudices, Tom found himself grappling with an unfamiliar sense of doubt. For the first time, he questioned the righteousness of the values that had once been his guiding principles, feeling the deep fissures of conflict within himself. As the day wore on, the diner remained hauntingly silent. The usual lunchtime crowd, which once brought a sense of normalcy and routine, failed to materialize, leaving Tom alone with his thoughts. The emptiness of the diner seemed to mirror the void he felt inside, amplifying his sense of isolation and despair. The letter in his pocket, with its weight and significance, felt like a constant, burning reminder of the pivotal decision he faced. It was as if every tick of the clock was a reminder of the urgency of his situation and the need to confront his conscience. Meanwhile, across town, Michael Carter was deep in a meeting with community leaders, his voice steady but infused with an impassioned resolve. "What happened to my father is not an isolated incident," Michael declared, his tone firm yet brimming with fierce determination. "It's a reflection of a deeper, systemic issue within our community. But we have a chance here to turn this painful moment into a catalyst for profound and lasting change." His words carried a sense of urgency and hope, seeking to transform the collective anger and sorrow into something constructive. An older woman, the head of the local chapter of the National Partnership, leaned forward, her eyes alight with curiosity. "What exactly are you proposing?" Senator, her question hung in the air, laden with the hope that Michael's vision could indeed spark a meaningful shift. Michael's gaze was resolute as he responded, "We're going to purchase Tom's diner." The room erupted in murmurs of surprise and confusion. "Buy it?" someone asked, bewildered. "Why would we want to do that?" Because Michael continued, his voice gaining strength, "We're going to transform it into something entirely new. We'll turn it into a place that fosters unity instead of division, a symbol of progress and inclusivity right in the heart of our town. His vision was one of hope and renewal, aiming to replace a legacy of intolerance with a beacon of positive change. As Michael outlined his plans, the energy in the room began to shift. What started as skepticism gradually transformed into excitement as people began to see the potential for real, tangible change. There was a collective sense of possibility, a dawning realization that they could indeed turn a painful chapter into a powerful testament to community resilience and solidarity. Meanwhile, John Carter sat on his porch, his mind a storm of memories and emotions. The recent events had unearthed long-buried recollections of his past, dragging him back to the turbulent days of the Vietnam War. He closed his eyes, and in his mind, he was once again amidst the chaos of the jungle. The face of Tom Harris Sr., his comrade and friend, appeared vividly in his thoughts. They had fought side by side, their bond forged in the crucible of war. But that fateful day, the day that shattered their world, still loomed large in his memory. John recalled the recruit, a young black soldier who had been terrified and overwhelmed by the brutality of war. In a moment of sheer panic, the young soldier made a mistake that had tragic consequences, resulting in the deaths of several men, including Tom Sr.'s closest friend. The profound grief and anger that followed had consumed Tom Sr., distorting his pain into a deep-seated hatred that extended beyond the individual soldier to all black people. John had watched in anguish as his friend's heart turned to stone, unable to see that the real enemy was not the color of a man's skin, but the relentless horrors of war. As John opened his eyes and returned to the present, a deep sadness enveloped him. He understood now that Tom Jr.'s prejudice was a legacy of pain passed down through generations. Yet, understanding the origins of the prejudice did not make it acceptable. John realized that breaking this cycle of hatred was crucial for achieving true change and healing. Back at the diner, Tom was in the process of closing up for the night when he heard a knock at the door. He glanced up to see Michael Carter standing outside, his face set with an earnest resolve. For a moment, Tom was tempted to ignore the knock, to pretend he hadn't seen it, and retreat into the comfort of his solitude. But something in Michael's determined expression made him hesitate. With a heavy sigh, Tom unlocked the door and opened it, the act of facing his visitor feeling like a step into the unknown. "We're closed," Tom said, his voice carrying a note of weariness and defensiveness, masking the tumult of emotions swirling within him. Michael gave a solemn nod. "I understand. I'm not here as a customer, Mr. Harris. I'm here to talk." Tom paused, visibly grappling with the unexpectedness of the encounter. After a brief hesitation, he reluctantly stepped aside to allow Michael entry into the diner. The two men stood in the cavernous emptiness of the establishment, the silence between them heavy with the weight of both history and deep-seated prejudice. Without a preamble, Michael broke the silence. "I'm aware of the offer you received," he said matter-of-factly. Tom's eyes widened, a flicker of astonishment crossing his face. "How did you?" Michael interrupted, cutting off Tom's question with an air of finality. "The specifics of how I know aren't important right now. What's crucial is what you intend to do with this offer." Tom's posture slumped, revealing the burden he carried. "I honestly don't know," he confessed, his voice tinged with despair. "This diner, it's all I have left. It's a piece of my father's legacy." Michael's stern expression softened slightly, revealing a hint of compassion. "Is this truly the legacy you wish to perpetuate? The legacy of hatred and division?" If you are still watching this video and find these stories useful, please comment number 5 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. Thank you for your valuable time. The harshness of Michael's words struck Tom deeply, causing him to flinch. For the first time, Tom was compelled to question the beliefs and values he had long clung to. "What do you want from me?" he asked, his voice barely audible, laden with vulnerability. Michael stepped closer, his gaze unwavering. "I want you to make a decision, Mr. Harris. A decision to rise above your father's shadow, to break the cycle of hatred that has plagued this place, and to embrace a new beginning." Tom met Michael's gaze and saw not criticism but a glimmer of genuine hope. In that fleeting moment, something within Tom began to shift. The emotional barriers he had erected over the years started to crumble, and he felt the tentative stirrings of transformation. Unbeknownst to Tom, the choice he was about to make would set into motion a chain of events that would not only alter his own life, but also reshape the entire community. The road ahead would be fraught with challenges, yet it held the promise of redemption and healing for a town long haunted by the shadows of its past. As dawn broke on a new day, Tom Harris stood outside his diner, clutching the keys with a mix of trepidation and resolve. He took a deep breath, summoning the courage for what was to come. With a trembling hand, he unlocked the door and stepped inside, knowing this might be his final time within these walls. The familiar sense of coffee and grease enveloped him, bringing a rush of memories. He recalled his father behind this very counter, imparting the skills needed to run the place. The echoes of laughter from a happier time seemed to linger, a stark contrast to the bitterness that had since tainted everything. Tom made his way to the back office, his steps heavy with the weight of his decision. He sank into the old, creaky chair behind the desk, feeling the full weight of the moment. Taking out the offer letter, he reviewed it one last time, absorbing the finality of the decision he was about to make. With a deep, resolute sigh, he picked up the phone and dialed the number at the bottom of the page. "This is Tom Harris," he said, his voice raw and choked with emotion. "I'm calling to accept the offer to purchase my diner." After hanging up the phone, Tom was enveloped by a complex blend of relief and sorrow. The diner, a cherished family heirloom, would soon belong to someone else. Yet, alongside the sadness, there was a burgeoning sense of hope for a new beginning and the possibility of becoming a better version of himself. Meanwhile, across town, Michael Carter's phone buzzed with a text message. He read it swiftly, a satisfied smile beginning to form on his lips. "It's done," Michael announced to his father, who was seated across from him at the breakfast table. John Carter's expression turned thoughtful as he processed the news. "And what comes next?" he inquired. Michael's smile broadened, reflecting a mix of excitement and anticipation. "Now, Dad, we move to phase 2 of our plan. It's time to transform that diner into a beacon of unity, one that will bring our community together rather than drive it apart." Over the next few weeks, the town was abuzz with excitement and speculation. The news that Tom Harris had sold his diner spread like wildfire, setting off a whirlwind of rumors and theories about who the new owner might be. Some people excitedly predicted that a major chain restaurant was moving in, promising a taste of urban sophistication. Others whispered about a trendy new coffee shop, complete with artisan brews and cozy seating. The rumors seemed endless and varied, but the truth, when it finally emerged, was far more surprising than anyone could have anticipated. It was a bright and sunny Saturday morning when the newly renovated diner was set to make its grand debut. A curious crowd gathered outside, their chatter a mix of anticipation and speculation. The air was filled with a sense of expectation as the clock ticked towards noon. At the appointed hour, the doors of the diner swung open, and a collective gasp of astonishment rippled through the crowd. Standing in the doorway, his face illuminated by a warm and inviting smile, was John Carter. "Welcome, everyone," John said, his voice resonating with clarity and warmth. "Welcome to the veteran table." The crowd, initially stunned and bewildered, murmured in confusion. John Carter, the very man who had been ejected from the diner just weeks before, was now its proud owner. John stepped aside, his gesture an invitation for everyone to come inside and witness the transformation firsthand. As people filed into the diner, they were greeted by a remarkable transformation. The interior had been completely overhauled. The walls were now adorned with a rich collection of photographs and memorabilia from various wars, paying tribute to veterans of all races and backgrounds. The booths, reupholstered in a deep, dignified blue, evoked the colors of military uniforms, creating a sense of solemnity and respect. The most striking feature, however, was the large mural that dominated the back wall. It depicted a diverse group of soldiers standing shoulder to shoulder, their faces reflecting a shared sense of purpose and camaraderie. At the center of this poignant mural were two figures, a young black soldier and a young white soldier embracing each other with their arms around one another. To those familiar with the local story, the resemblance between young John Carter and Tom Harris Sr. was unmistakable, adding a deeply personal touch to the mural's message. As visitors took in the breathtaking changes, John made his way to the center of the room, his heart brimming with emotion. Friends, neighbors. He began, his voice steady and heartfelt. This diner has long been a fixture in our community, but it has also been a symbol of division and prejudice. Today we change that. Today we transform it into a place of unity, understanding, and healing. John went on to explain that the veteran table would be more than just a restaurant. It was envisioned as a community hub, a sanctuary where veterans could find support and where people from all walks of life could come together to share meals and stories. The diner would host regular events aimed at fostering understanding and dismantling barriers that had long divided the community. As John spoke, the crowd's initial shock began to fade, replaced by a growing sense of enthusiasm. Nods of approval and the occasional tear became visible as the atmosphere in the diner shifted from disbelief to hopeful anticipation. The room seemed to hum with a renewed sense of possibility. Yet John had one more surprise in store. As he concluded his heartfelt speech, he gestured towards the kitchen with a sense of anticipation. "And now, I'd like to introduce you to our new head chef." The kitchen doors swung open, and a hush fell over the crowd. There, in a pristine white chef's uniform, stood Tom Harris. Tom stepped forward, his posture hunched and his gaze lowered, as though bracing for the worst. When he finally raised his eyes, he was met not with hostility, but with a sea of expectant, curious faces. "I know I'm probably the last person you expected to see here," Tom began, his voice trembling with a mixture of regret and resolve. "I understand that I don't deserve your forgiveness. What I did, what I believed, was wrong. Deeply, fundamentally wrong." Tom's voice grew firmer as he continued. "But John and Michael Carter have given me an opportunity I scarcely deserve, a chance to learn, to grow, and to strive to be better than I was. I promise you, I will dedicate every day to earning the trust they've placed in me." If you are still watching this video and find these stories useful, please comment number 6 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. Thank you for your valuable time. As Tom's words settled in, the diner fell into a contemplative silence. Slowly, a single clap broke through the stillness, followed by another, until the room was filled with a wave of applause. It wasn't yet forgiveness, but it was a recognition of the difficult journey Tom was embarking upon and the courage it took to publicly acknowledge his past mistakes. As the applause subsided, John stepped forward once more. "This is what the veteran table is all about," he said with a determined resolve. "It's about second chances, about mending old wounds and building a better future together. I hope you all will be a part of this journey." With that declaration, John officially opened the diner. As the crowd began to mingle, exploring the newly transformed space and sampling the food, there was a palpable sense of change in the air. Old barriers were beginning to crumble, conversations were sparking, and a community was taking its first steps toward healing and unity. In the bustling kitchen of the veteran table, Tom worked alongside a new team of staff members, a remarkably diverse group that he would never have considered hiring just a few months ago. Each time he prepared a meal and saw a smile in return, he felt a weight slowly lifting from his shoulders. Every dish he served, every genuine expression of gratitude from his patrons, was a small step towards personal redemption. Tom was acutely aware that the journey ahead would be fraught with challenges and obstacles. Nevertheless, for the first time in years, he felt a glimmer of hope beginning to take root in his heart. Meanwhile, outside the kitchen, John and Michael Carter observed their vision materializing before their eyes. As they stood back, taking in the lively scene of their diner, Michael turned to his father with a hint of uncertainty in his voice. "Do you think it will work, Dad?" he asked quietly, the weight of their dream palpable in his tone. John, however, looked at his son with a twinkle of optimism in his eyes and a reassuring smile. "It's a start, son. A good start. And sometimes that's all you need to begin changing the world." As the day unfolded, the veteran table buzzed with an invigorating energy. The once rigid walls that had separated the community began to dissolve. People who had never exchanged words before were now mingling, sharing meals, and finding common ground with one another. The diner was becoming a space where differences were set aside, and conversations were bridging gaps that had divided the town for years. In the weeks and months that followed, the veteran table evolved beyond its role as a mere diner. It transformed into a beacon of hope and a symbol of change for the entire town. Regularly scheduled events at the diner fostered open dialogue about challenging issues, creating opportunities for individuals from varied backgrounds to connect and understand each other. These gatherings were instrumental in breaking down barriers and nurturing a sense of unity. Tom Harris, dedicated to proving himself worthy of the community's trust, worked tirelessly. He actively listened to feedback, adapted his approach, and committed himself to personal growth. Gradually, people began to see him not as the prejudiced man he once was, but as a living example of the power of transformation and redemption. The story of the veteran table resonated far beyond the confines of their small town. Media outlets across the country picked up the story, intrigued by the remarkable evolution of both the diner and its former owner. The tale even attracted the attention of a documentary filmmaker who approached John and Michael with the idea of sharing their inspiring journey with a broader audience. However, the most poignant moment came nearly a year after the diner's grand reopening. Tom Harris Sr., who had been residing in a nursing home in a different state, visited. Frail and wheelchair-bound, he was a mere shadow of the formidable, bitter man he had once been. As John wheeled his father into the veteran table, Tom Sr.'s eyes widened with astonishment. He took in the vibrant mural, the diverse crowd of patrons, and his son working harmoniously alongside people he would have previously shunned. Overwhelmed by the sight, Tom Sr.'s emotions surged, and for the first time in decades he began to cry. "I was wrong," he murmured, holding John's hand tightly. "All these years I was so wrong." That day, enveloped by the warmth and unity of the veteran table, old wounds began to mend. Tom Sr. shared tales from his wartime experiences with a newfound perspective, no longer framed by bitterness, but by a shared sense of humanity. He spoke of the fear, chaos, and the common bonds that connected soldiers across enemy lines. As the sun set on this momentous day, John Carter stood outside the diner, gazing up at the sign that now proudly read the veteran table. He reflected on the arduous journey that had brought them to this point, the struggles, the pain, the doubts, all of which had culminated in this profound transformation. Inside the diner, the atmosphere remained vibrant and full of life. Through the window, John observed Tom Sr. surrounded by a group of veterans, both young and old, from a variety of backgrounds. They listened attentively as he spoke, nodding in understanding and offering words of encouragement. Feeling a hand on his shoulder, John turned to find Michael standing beside him. "You did it, Dad," Michael said softly, his voice tinged with pride. "You changed everything." John shook his head, a gentle smile spreading across his face. "We did it, son. All of us, together." As they stood side by side, watching the dynamic scene inside the diner, neither could have anticipated the profound impact their actions would have on the world beyond their small southern town. Yet the veteran table's story was far from over. It was on the brink of embarking on a new chapter that would reach and inspire lives far beyond their community. The following morning, as John prepared to open the diner for the day, he received an unexpected call that would change the course of their journey. On the other end of the line was a producer from a prominent national news network. They were interested in doing a feature story about the veteran table and the incredible impact it had made within the community. The producer explained that the story had caught their attention due to its powerful message of unity and transformation. Initially, John was taken aback and felt a surge of hesitation. The diner's initiative had never been about seeking fame or recognition. It had always been about making a difference, however small. The idea of being in the spotlight was daunting. Yet, as he pondered the opportunity, John began to realize that sharing their story could serve as a beacon of hope for others. It could encourage people in different communities to initiate their efforts toward reconciliation and understanding. With this new perspective, John decided to embrace the chance and agreed to the interview. When the day arrived for the news crew to visit, the entire town seemed to be brimming with a palpable excitement. People gathered outside the diner in anticipation, eager to see the cameras in action and to possibly be featured themselves. The air was thick with a buzz of curiosity and pride, as if the entire community was about to witness something momentous. Inside the diner, John took his place at one of the booths, the mural depicting diverse soldiers serving as a poignant and powerful backdrop. As the interview commenced, John spoke candidly about the events that had ignited this movement, the hurtful incident of blatant discrimination he had faced, and the profound decision to respond with compassion rather than resentment. His words resonated with sincerity and conviction. "It would have been all too easy to meet hatred with more hatred," John said, his voice steady and filled with emotion. "But that would have only perpetuated the cycle of animosity. Instead, we chose to view this as an opportunity for growth and healing. By extending love and understanding, we aim to break the cycle and foster a sense of community and acceptance." The reporter then turned her attention to Tom Harris, who was also seated at the booth. Tom's hands trembled slightly as he began to share his journey. His voice, though initially shaky, grew stronger as he recounted his transformation. "I was raised with beliefs that I now realize were deeply flawed," Tom admitted, his eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "It was through this experience and the extraordinary grace shown by John and Michael that I came to understand the true meaning of change. I'm not proud of who I was, but every day I strive to be someone I can be proud of." If you are still watching this video and find these stories useful, please comment number 8 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. Thank you for your valuable time. As the interview continued, other members of the community began to join in, each contributing their own stories of how the veterans' table had shifted their perspectives and fostered connections among individuals who might never have crossed paths otherwise. The reporter, visibly moved by the heartfelt testimonies, asked John what message he hoped viewers would take away from their story. John took a moment to reflect before responding thoughtfully. "I hope people will see that change is possible, even in the face of deeply entrenched prejudices. It's a challenging process and it doesn't happen overnight, but with patience, empathy, and a genuine willingness to recognize the humanity in everyone, we can work towards creating a more compassionate world." As the news crew packed up their equipment, a sense of anticipation filled the air. The community was buzzing with the expectation that once their story aired, it might bring significant changes, and they were right. The feature story aired on a Sunday evening during prime time, capturing the attention of millions of viewers across the nation. The story of a small southern town's journey from division to unity captivated the audience, and the response was swift and overwhelming. Social media exploded with reactions, phone lines at the network were inundated with calls, and the veterans' table quickly became a trending topic. In the days that followed, the diner experienced an influx of visitors from all corners of the country. People traveled for hours, even days, just to witness the place that had become a symbol of acceptance and healing. It wasn't only curious tourists who were drawn to the diner. Community leaders from various towns and cities began reaching out, eager to learn how they could implement similar initiatives in their communities. John and Michael found themselves fielding numerous calls and emails from individuals across the nation seeking advice on bridging divides and promoting healing. The impact of their story exceeded their wildest expectations. A group of filmmakers approached John, Michael, and Tom about creating a documentary that would delve deeper into the broader themes of prejudice, forgiveness, and community healing, extending beyond the veterans' table. As filming began, the trio revisited the events that had led them to this point. Though revisiting some of the painful moments was emotionally challenging, it also reinforced their journey and strengthened their commitment to continue their efforts. The documentary crew followed them for several months, capturing the daily operations of the diner, the community events they hosted, and the ongoing process of healing and growth. They interviewed townspeople, veterans who had found solace at the veterans' table, and even some initial skeptics who had witnessed the positive changes firsthand. One of the most poignant moments in the documentary was an interview with Tom Harris, SR. Despite his declining health, Tom SR spoke with unfiltered honesty about the roots of his prejudice and the transformative power of the love and forgiveness he had experienced. "I carried so much anger for so long," Tom SR said, his voice fragile but his eyes clear. "I allowed one harrowing moment from the war to shape my view of an entire group of people. But witnessing the work my son and John have done here, seeing the love and unity they've fostered, has opened my eyes in ways I never thought possible. I only wish I had learned this lesson sooner." As the documentary neared its final stages of production, the buzz around it began to intensify, fueling an even greater sense of anticipation. News of the film's progress quickly spread, capturing the attention of major film festivals, each expressing eagerness to host its premiere. The buzz was so strong that there was even speculative chatter about the possibility of Oscar nominations. However, for John, Michael, and Tom, the true measure of their success went beyond the allure of awards and accolades. Their real success lay in the tangible, everyday changes they witnessed within their community and the heartfelt stories they received from individuals whose lives had been profoundly touched by their example. One quiet evening, after a grueling day of filming, John found solace at the counter of the veterans' table, cradling a steaming cup of coffee. The diner was serene. The hum of conversation had long since faded as the last customers departed for the night. Tom was in the kitchen, busy tidying up after a day's work, while Michael sat nearby, engrossed in sorting through a stack of paperwork. "Breaking the calm," John said. "You know, when we first set out on this journey, I could never have predicted where it would lead us." Michael glanced up from his papers, a wry smile forming on his lips. "You mean to say you didn't foresee becoming a national symbol for community healing and racial reconciliation?" John chuckled softly, shaking his head. "Not at all. I simply wanted to take a stand for what was right, to demonstrate that love could triumph over hatred." Tom emerged from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a dish towel. "And just look at what that stand has brought about," he said, sweeping his arm around the diner. "You've transformed countless lives, John, mine included." John reached out and placed a reassuring hand on Tom's shoulder. "We've all changed, Tom. That's the real beauty of it. We're all on this journey together." As they sat together, reflecting on their shared journey, The three men who had once been divided by deep-seated differences felt a profound sense of awe at the path that had led them to this point. Little did they know, their journey was far from over. The release of the documentary was poised to thrust their story onto the global stage, inspiring movements for change and reconciliation in ways they had never imagined. But that, as the saying goes, is a story for another time. The premiere of the documentary, aptly titled Table of Brotherhood: The Veterans' Table Story, took place in a bustling theater in New York City. John, Michael, and Tom found themselves walking the red carpet, an experience none of them had ever anticipated. As they settled into their seats in the dimly lit theater, surrounded by film industry elites, civil rights leaders, and media personalities, a mixture of excitement and nervousness enveloped them. They wondered how their story would resonate with such a diverse and discerning audience. The film opens with the harrowing incident at the diner, depicting the harsh reality of racism with unflinching honesty. The audience gasped collectively at the scenes showing Tom's initial treatment of John. Yet, as the narrative progressed, unveiling the remarkable transformation of both individuals and their communities, the atmosphere in the theater began to shift. By the time the credits rolled, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. The applause was not only thunderous but also sustained, reflecting the deep emotional impact of the film. When John, Michael, and Tom ascended the stage for a Q&A session, they were met with a standing ovation. The questions from the audience were both insightful and probing. One viewer inquired how John had found the strength to forgive Tom. With palpable emotion in his voice, John replied, "Forgiveness isn't about condoning what happened. It's about choosing not to let hatred consume you. It's about recognizing the humanity in everyone, even those who have wronged you. It's not an easy path. But it's crucial if we are to progress as a society." Another attendee asked Tom what advice he would give to others who harbored similar prejudices to those he once held. Tom took a deep breath, gripping the podium firmly. "I would tell them that holding on to hate only harms yourself. It blinds you to the beauty of human diversity and the enriching experiences that come from opening your heart to others. I spent so many years in anger and fear. Don't make the same mistake I did." The documentary's impact was both swift and profound. It was picked up for distribution by a major streaming service, making it accessible to millions of viewers worldwide. The story of the Veterans' Table ignited discussions about race, reconciliation, and community healing in homes, classrooms, and boardrooms across the globe, sparking a broader movement for understanding and change. But perhaps the most profound and transformative impact was felt closer to home. In the months following the documentary's release, the Veterans' Table at the diner became a symbol of hope and unity, evolving into a pilgrimage site of sorts. People traveled from every corner of the country, and even from distant corners of the globe, to witness firsthand the extraordinary atmosphere of acceptance and healing that had blossomed there. The diner had become more than just a place to eat. It was now a beacon of community spirit and reconciliation. John, Michael, and Tom found themselves in high demand as speakers at various conferences and events dedicated to community building and racial reconciliation. They shared their story with remarkable dedication, always emphasizing that the profound changes they had achieved were not unique to their diner but could be replicated anywhere with sincere commitment and compassion. Their message resonated deeply, inspiring others to pursue similar paths of healing and unity in their communities. If you are still watching this video and find these stories useful, please comment number 9 below to let me know that you are still watching this video with me. Thank you for your valuable time. As the number of visitors grew, so did the diner's role in the community. To accommodate the influx, they expanded their operations, continually focusing on their core mission of supporting veterans and fostering community healing. One of their notable initiatives was the creation of a mentorship program that paired veterans with at-risk youth in the community. This program proved to be an overwhelming success, offering invaluable guidance and support to young people while also providing veterans with a renewed sense of purpose and fulfillment. Over time, the impact of the Veterans Table began to ripple outwards in unexpected and remarkable ways. Other communities, inspired by the diner's story and the documentary's message, began to establish their versions of the diner. From small, tight-knit towns in the Midwest to bustling metropolitan areas on the coasts, people came together to address long-standing divisions and work towards healing and reconciliation. About a year after the documentary's release, John received a phone call that left him utterly stunned. It was from a prominent national civil rights organization that had seen the documentary and been profoundly moved by its story. They wanted to invite John, Michael, and Tom to their annual conference to discuss their experiences and share their insights on community healing and racial reconciliation. The day of the conference visit was surreal for the trio. As they walked through halls filled with civil rights leaders, activists, and luminaries, John couldn't help but reflect on their incredible journey from the modest confines of a small-town diner to the grandeur of a national stage. Their journey had indeed been nothing short of extraordinary. Their presentation at the conference was a blend of humility and inspiration. The audience listened with rapt attention as they recounted their journey, responding with thoughtful questions and deep admiration for their accomplishments. The organization's president praised their efforts, stating, "What you've done is provide a roadmap for healing in communities across our nation. You've demonstrated that change is possible, even in the face of deep-seated prejudice and historical divisions." As the conference concluded, the organization announced the establishment of a national initiative inspired by the Veterans Table, aimed at promoting community healing and racial reconciliation across the country. John, Michael, and Tom were honored to be asked to serve as advisors for this new program. The conference and the new initiative drew renewed attention to the Veterans Table. Media crews flocked to the small town, eager to capture the community's reaction to this significant development. Yet, amidst the surge of excitement and media spotlight, John, Michael, and Tom remained steadfast in their commitment. They understood that true and lasting change did not stem from grand gestures or national accolades, but from the ongoing, dedicated efforts of individuals committed to making a difference in their daily lives. Back at the diner, life continued with a renewed sense of purpose. Veterans found solace and support within its walls, and community members from diverse backgrounds came together over meals, sharing stories and bridging divides. Tom, who had once been a symbol of prejudice in the town, continued his journey of personal growth and redemption. One evening, as the sun set and the last of the customers departed, John noticed Tom standing in front of the mural, lost in deep thought. "Penny for your thoughts," John asked, joining him by the mural. Tom was silent for a moment before speaking softly. "I was just reflecting on my father," he said, his voice tinged with emotion, "thinking about how proud he would be of what we've achieved here, and how sorrowful he would be for having spent so many years mired in anger and bitterness." John nodded, understanding the complexity of Tom's feelings. Your father's journey, like yours, is a poignant reminder that change is always possible. His story is part of what makes this place so meaningful. As they stood in contemplation, gazing at the mural that depicted soldiers of all races united, they heard the door open behind them. Turning, they saw Michael entering with an expression of excitement. "You're not going to believe this," Michael exclaimed, waving a letter in his hand. "We've been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize." John and Tom exchanged incredulous looks. The idea that their small-town diner could be considered for such a prestigious honor seemed almost beyond belief. Yet it was a testament to the profound impact of their work and the far-reaching influence of their message of unity and healing. Michael's voice carried a sense of reverence as he continued reading aloud from the letter. "The nomination highlights our extensive efforts in fostering community healing and advancing racial reconciliation. The letter commends us for providing a groundbreaking model to address deep-seated societal divisions with a peaceful and transformative approach. As the gravity of the announcement settled over them, John was overwhelmed by a flood of emotions. He felt an immense pride swell within him, reflecting on the achievements and milestones they had reached together. Yet this pride was tempered by a profound sense of humility, recognizing the honor of such distinguished recognition. It also fueled a renewed determination to press on with their mission, knowing that their work was far from over. "Well," John said, a smile spreading slowly across his face, "it seems like we have our work cut out for us. There's still a lot more healing to be done." His words were a blend of optimism and resolve, signaling that their journey was just beginning. Tom, standing by his side, nodded in agreement, his smile mirroring John's sentiment. Meanwhile, Michael couldn't help but chuckle at his father's modest response to the monumental news. The atmosphere was one of shared joy and contemplation as they locked up the diner for the night. As the three men prepared to leave, their thoughts drifted to the remarkable journey that had led them to this moment. They reminisced about how a single act of prejudice had ignited a movement that now spanned across the nation, transforming lives and communities in profound ways. The veterans' table had evolved into much more than a simple diner. It had become a symbol of hope, a testament to the enduring power of forgiveness, and a living proof of what can be achieved when people unite to heal old wounds and envision a brighter future. As they stepped out into the calm of the night, the soft glow of the neon sign above the veterans' table illuminated their path, casting a warm and hopeful light. It was a powerful symbol of the positive change they had helped bring into a world often overshadowed by division and hatred. The story of John Carter, Michael Carter, and Tom Harris was far from reaching its conclusion. In many ways, it felt as though their story was only just beginning. Each life they touched, each community they inspired, and each barrier they dismantled was adding a new chapter to America's ongoing journey toward true equality and understanding. And it all began with a simple, yet profound, act of forgiveness in a small-town diner, which had sparked a movement poised to reshape the nation. Thank you for joining us on this journey through an eye-opening story of prejudice, redemption, and transformation. We've seen how a single act of discrimination can set off a chain of events that challenges a community's values and leads to profound change. What have you learned from this story so far? How has it impacted your understanding of forgiveness and the power of second chances? We'd love to hear your thoughts and reflections. Please share one key takeaway that you plan to practice in your own life in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave your comment below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Your support helps us continue to bring you more inspiring and thought-provoking content. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video.